I was last week I was making that video for Friday night, and I ran out of space on my hard drive because I have a half gig, which is I mean, even when I got it, I was like, it's
Half
not
terabyte.
enough, but yes, thank you.
I was gonna say a half gig is tiny.
That was 90. That was like in the 90s, maybe. No, that was even in the maybe. I don't know when it's hard for me to remember. It's hard. It's hard for me to remember,
Yeah, late
but
'90s would have been pretty consistent still.
no, certainly
Yeah,
we had like a few gigabytes.
I mean, sure, but the largest I remember, well, the largest I remember having convenient access to for cost was maybe a 2 gigabyte drive.
I'm not. I'm trying to remember, but this is where my memory fails. My memory is not so good. What I can remember is in 2005 having a 60 gigabyte iPod, and it was bigger than the capacity of my friend's laptop. He had like a 40 gig hard drive in his computer.
I don't remember. I think I had like an 80 gig drive in mine at the time. It was close. I remember it being very close, but I think I had a larger drive.
I can remember when, you know, I can remember when that was the size that you would get in the early 2000s. I can remember when I got 1 gigabyte of RAM, and I was like, "Whoa, yes, awesome."
Yeah, I want to go back to the storage thing real quick though, because I have
Yeah,
been struggling with storage obviously for a while, and I'm down to uh, about 350 gig free at the moment out of 4 terabytes.
I was about to ask you what your starting capacity is, and yeah, so yeah, I that's a big drive. Like I think 2 terabyte. I'd be more than. I don't think I would. Just based on how I work and the things that I don't work on, I would be fine. But that's also considering that I have places where I offload stuff that I don't keep on a regular basis. And I almost I almost over the weekend erased my drive and start over because like there's stuff on here that like it's I got to get some. There's some stuff I got to get off of here because I was using I was for a while I got to use my work computer as my personal computer because there was no corporate malware on it, um, and so when I had to when I had to send that one back, or when I got this one, I did a what's the word I'm looking for? I used Migration Assistant to move all the data over, and now I'm in a place where I copied everything over, preparing to um, uh, erase and reinstall. Actually, just erase and start fresh. I wasn't going to reinstall Mac OS. Um, maybe I don't know. I'll probably will in when Tahoe is available as a general release. But just to get some of the old software on here and old settings on here that I don't need anymore. But sorry, what I was saying was I ended up not because when I transferred all of my data over, it was 280 gigs. And I'm like, I have 512 gigabyte hard drive. There should be like what's taking up all this space because like I kept having to offload some stuff when I was working on that video, and I kept getting down to less than a gigabyte of free space, and I'm like, what's taking up all this space? And I mean, I've run Daisy Disk before, and I know that there's stuff here and there, and I was just like, it just hadn't really been a problem, and so um, I went to see. I dove into my user library directory, and I ended up finding 40 gigs in some cache that I'm like, I am not going to need this. And now I can't remember what it was, and I'm kind of annoyed that I don't remember. But I didn't mess with anything with iCloud Drive. Oh, it might have been. It might have been Google Drive from work stuff.
Yeah, so this is an interesting timing of things because over the past week, I have been reevaluating my backup and storage strategy in general. Um, One, my backup now, when I run it, takes an insanely long amount of time and always errors out. And I really should break it up anyway. But if I'm going to do that, maybe it would be nice to have some feedback and breaking up into. Long story short, what I've decided to do was create. I finally upgraded my license for Carbon Copy Cloner and created a bunch of rules to use it to synchronize things. I'm going to let that run, see if it also errors out, because technically, I believe it's using rsync in the background. It might not be anymore. I don't remember. I know at one point it did. But I'm going to let it go through and process everything at least one time and see if anything errors out. So I took the time to create rules for all the stuff that I want to do. Then I'm going to erase everything on the laptop because I have found that my current strategy, while it makes plenty of sense from a workflow and storage location perspective, it's just not well suited to long-term project management. Because, I'm keeping track of raw video files, edited projects, raw photographs, edited photographs, deliverable versions, etc., right? And it's not sustainable keeping the separation between personal and work in separate, like, folders and subfolders within the movies and pictures folders, trying to keep with the Mac OS hierarchy. And so what I need to do is I need to scrap all of it, sound effects and sound files and all that stuff, like, and Xcode projects, like it's just too all over the place. And so going forward, once I reset everything up, I'm going to set up a company folder within the home directory that's going to have all of the associated stuff, whether it's audio related, video related, photo, etc. It's all going to be under that company folder. And then my personal stuff can go to their respective folders, and that will streamline things for me from a backup perspective instead of having a customer deliverable photos folder in the photos hierarchy and a customer project library. And, like I broke it down like that, and it's just not sustainable long term. Not when I'm backing up to external drives and to a NAS for duplication purposes and trying to manage that those stay in sync. It's become overwhelming. So it's a problem of my own design, but I need to take the time to actually clean it up, and I don't want to do that until after next week's trip.
That makes a lot of sense to basically let your home directory be your home directory, like your personal home directory, and then create a company folder. If I'm understanding this, you're going to create a company folder to be kind of a second home directory within the home directory, just to manage all of the work related.
Correct.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Because it made a lot of sense to me to have like production resources for video work in the movies folder in that hierarchy, but then I had to also have a separate folder for the actual projects files themselves, and a separate folder for the raw video, and a separate folder for deliverables, and it quickly became a problem when you then have to turn around and do the same thing for audio files and the same thing for photos, and I need to streamline it.
Yeah, I've also heard there's I think This Week in Tech talked about there is some amount of concern about long-term storage on SSDs. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but I'll put a link in the notes, link out to where I originally heard it, and and because it would be like it was something, I guess, originally was post or on a podcast, This Week in Tech podcast, and then but I didn't listen to that particular podcast. I heard folks from the Accidental Tech podcast talking about it. So
yeah, I know in the past there have been concerns. So good rule of thumb, if you talk to anybody in any level of content production, whether they focus on just, photography or more than that, doesn't matter. You have your working version, you have your archived hard drive version that you can like go back and pull media from easily, and then you have your archival like network storage solution that in my case I can also pull from easily. So it's and then typically you would archive that off to tape for longevity and cold storage kind of stuff. But I don't see a reason to go that far for what I have. But I do know that because I'm leveraging SSDs, there has long been discussion about issues with when they fail, they just fail. So it's not like bad sectors on magnetic media where you could theoretically recover from. It's just
no power.
Dead. Yeah. And so I don't mind running that risk as long as I'm keeping it in sync to my NAS, because the likelihood of that storage and the NAS failing at the same time is pretty low. Not impossible, especially considering they're both in the same physical location. So, a tornado could fuck it all up. But it's... I'm running a manageable risk for what I need, because I don't promise being able to go back more than about 30 days anyway to a client. I think we've talked about this before. Like I will do everything I can to keep it as long as humanly possible, and I'll even archive off to other media occasionally here and there, just as a good rule of thumb. But I definitely don't promise more than 30 days.
That seems pretty short, but
well, and I do vary it,
but I don't know what the I mean, it's well, yeah, it's a different kind of data, because I expect that once you have it complete, they have their copy,
right? And so there's a difference between maintaining the raw footage to go back to and the final edited product. So the raw stuff is what I don't guarantee more than 30 days. Once you've received your delivered product, I don't guarantee I can ever go back to the original. The delivered product I typically guarantee for at least 6 months. Realistically, I don't think I couldn't go back and pull any delivered product other than maybe some of the really early stuff I did for some music, like bands, local bands in Columbus. I may not have access to that anymore, but that would be, quite a ways back. That's 20
decades,
plus years.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you have SSDs in your NVR?
No.
Okay. I thought not, but
I'm actually running
it doesn't really make
Seagate
sense.
Iron Wolf drives in it.
Does Unify have a limited number of supported drives or recommended drive? What is their? I know. So I'm familiar with Synology and what
I know they have a
ecosystem was like.
compatibility list. I pretty much work under the assumption that if you don't support the industry leader, you don't support anybody. So
Well,
like the Iron Wolf Seagate, the Pro versions are what I use in all of my stuff. Or I do have a couple of the WD equivalents in my Synology.
Raptor, the red Raptor.
I don't think that was it. I'll have to go back and look. But that's all I use. I don't venture off into any other brands. And I prefer the Seagates, surprisingly. So this is just fascinating to me. For a long time, I would not touch a Seagate hard drive because I had nothing but problems with them. But when it comes to network attached storage, I've never had a better performing drive.
Oh, interesting.
And so I don't know if they just got their shit together or I just happened to be fortunate, but I definitely see a difference in what they produced for enterprise storage as opposed to consumer use.
Well, wasn't Seagate the drive that Apple used in the iMacs that had a repair extension program?
I think so.
And it was that the firmware basically treated the drives like they were brand new drives, even like years into the use, and they just killed them. It was like bad firmware.
I don't remember the details, but that sounds accurate. So the only drive brand that I ever had worse luck with than Seagate back in the day, quote unquote, was Toshiba, and I would to this day I would not accept a Toshiba hard drive if you just gave it to me, regardless of how beautiful it was.
So, I mean, that's interesting because ever since that repair extension program, I avoided Seagate, and but it wasn't like, ooh, Seagate is bad. I was just like, ooh, I'm gonna avoid them. But it wasn't so much that, yeah, I did avoid them, but I was also I'd used Western Digital a lot, and I don't know. I think a friend of mine who, when I don't remember if I was still I don't know if I was just in college or just still in high school, but I had a friend who I know at the time he was working on his bachelor's degree. He was getting a BS in computer science, and I think he ended up, I know he ended up with a master's in computer science, and he was so this is like late 90s, early 2000s, and he was like, yeah, you should go with, Western Digital Caviar Black was the way to go. And I can remember buying a used one in the early 2000s off of eBay, 200 gigabytes, and putting it in my own enclosure, and that thing, it ran for 10 years, and I just stopped using it. I think I got a new enclosure for it and then gave it to somebody, and I think they used it for a number of years and gave it back to me. I think I still have it. It might still be in my house somewhere, but that would have been no, maybe I don't still have it because that would have been an IDE drive on the inside. So anyway, I have just used Western Digital. The only time I've used Toshiba was in a Synology that it was the only supported drive that was a terabyte, and it was a 2.5-inch drive because I had the Synology that had that took 2.5-inch drives, and so it was a 4-bay, and I've had to replace 2 of those drives, but it didn't really matter because they were cheap and they were in a RAID array, so I never experienced any sort of data loss. So it looks like you got a couple of Samsungs. Those are M.2s.
Yeah, those
Is
are
that in
the cache devices in the Synology.
NVR? Okay. That's in the Synology.
The mixed drives with the cache devices. That's all the
that's cool.
DS818, I think it is. But
okay.
Essentially, I've got 2 of the WD drives, and I was hoping the model number would tell me what the color and all that stuff was. I'd have to go pull the drives, I guess, to see. But the other Seagates are all the Iron Wolf Pros. And I notice I've got a couple of different model numbers based on when I purchased, apparently.
Yeah, I see that.
And then the other screenshot is what's in the Unify NAS, and that's all Seagates at the moment. Fucking 16
you got a lot of
drives.
You got a lot of storage there. Whew. And that's a 7. Oh, that's right. It is a 7-bay drive.
Yeah.
That's the Pro, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because the standard, I can't remember if it's standard, is 4 drives.
Yeah, the only drawback, the way I have it configured, is I would have to add 2 drives to expand storage, and then the final drive would just be a hot spare.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
But that's because I have 2 drive protection, so makes sense.
Oh, okay. If you wanted to do, with 7 drives, why would you not want to have 2 drive protection?
And honestly, it would be great to have the hot spare in there too. It was just a cost measure at the time of setting it up. You know, eventually it will justify adding those extra 3 drives, and then, yeah, I'll only gain another 16 terabytes out of that, but maintaining the integrity for my local, like, full archival backup is important.
So that hot spare would be so that if one drive fails, it automatically takes its place and it's already already rebuilding.
Correct.
Oh, that's a nice feature.
You know, the Synology can actually do that as well. You just lose a drive capacity. And so if you use like the Synology Hybrid RAID, it manages it in a different way so that you gain a little more space usage out of just a standard RAID allocation. But honestly, I mean, the Synology RAID for me is just personal media storage at this point. And then the Unified, the UNAS, is well, technically it has my personal backup as well, but that's only because I have the room for it. Eventually it will get to a point where I'll archive that off, and the Synology will be strictly personal, and the Unify will be strictly business.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense. That way you can keep things ordered well.
Yep. I'm really looking forward to being able to erase my laptop and set it up, though, in a more streamlined fashion, and be able to keep operational space at less of a constrained premium.
Yeah, I am. It's funny that I'm in the same boat as you. I need to wipe this and start fresh and go from and build. So I think what I'm going to end up doing, since I found 40 gigs in a cache that I didn't need, I'm pretty confident it was Google Drive that had 40 gigs cached on my drive. That'll give me enough headroom for the next 3 months, assuming Tahoe will be out in September or October. I think I'll be fine, and I'll download it, put it on a drive, and do an erase and install. I haven't done one of those, and I can't remember the last time I did an erase install.
I'm kind of looking forward to it from a couple of different perspectives at this point, because I will also time it with Tahoe if I can. But one, I've played with a lot of stuff on this computer. Like, I've got all sorts of audio programs and everything else that I need to start over with what I actually use day to day now, what I've decided on, and clean out some of the cruft other than that. But I've also played a lot with video formats. Interesting note, if you decide to record high quality or the highest quality video you can on an iPhone using the Blackmagic camera app, which I certainly recommend for a number of different reasons, that video is so exorbitantly large and well beyond anything any person needs. Like, I recorded some test snippets, we're talking maybe 10 minutes, 4K, Apple ProRes, Apple Log, so essentially raw video files. I could still record ProRes log to a, I guess you would say a compressed file format, but the same 10 minutes 4K Canon log off of my R5C was less than 50% of this file size of what I got off the iPhone. Like, it was so drastically different, it's not even funny. Now, granted, I was testing insane settings on the phone, but like, I've got easily 350 gigs out of 2 files that if I were to go ahead and bring them into something and edit them and export them into a more usable format, I could get a lot of space back just with 2 files being changed. And they're not files I necessarily have to keep, but I'm going to make sure I have an archive of them for referencing back to with my tests, to I'll get them saved off, and then I'll clear them up, and that'll give me operational space again, in theory, until Tahoe.
That's
Oh, it's absolutely asinine, because
I was just gonna say that's bonkers.
And I don't even know, this is where I need to learn more about the file formats or the compression ratios or codecs, or honestly, I don't even know what the right word for it is anymore. But the difference is if I record 4K into Apple ProRes 422,
Containers?
I don't know, maybe. I'm sure there's something with compression, but 4K into that container or that file is asinine. It's insane. I can also record 4K Apple log, which is all I need, into HEVC at 54 meg per second bitrate, and it's indistinguishable from my camera, and the file size is significantly reduced. And so I'm sure it's compression, and I'm sure technically I get higher dynamic range and some other stuff if I record straight to ProRes, high quality. I just don't need it. And maybe that's the difference between like my production use case and Hollywood cinema. But if so, then more power to them.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think I assume he's probably still in the industry. He's probably still in the industry, but former colleague of ours,
DJ.
Yeah, I think he would be a good person to talk to. A guy who lives down the street from me, he also is. We had a conversation. He's a filmmaker, and he's actually working on something this summer that I don't think it's going to be in Sidewalk this year. I can't remember which. I don't remember which festival they're aiming for, but it's after Sidewalk, so they're not gonna. So they're like, we're aiming to. I think it's in September, but I don't remember where. But so they're not going for Sidewalk, and I'd say maybe like a year from now, like next year's Sidewalk, they might try to drop it in there or submit it for that. But we were talking about video formats and just we in our conversation we just limited it to resolution because the resolutions available are coming close to the edge of human perception, and there are cameras out there that record beyond human perception. And I understand it's like you get all this in frame because you want to, like, you can change the aspect ratio and so forth. So knowing what your plan is, final aspect ratio and being able to pan within the image is helpful. But there's a point where it's like, what is when at what point are we like, do we have diminishing returns?
So we could talk a lot about this for obvious reasons,
Yeah.
But one of the things that I was just going to mention, because this was an issue on my mind when I was deciding how I was going to approach what cameras I used when and where, kind of thing. So predominantly a Canon guy. I've been a Canon guy for a long time. My primary camera is a Canon, technically capable of shooting 8K. I say technically capable because I would have to record to external device, like an external SSD. I can't record 8K in camera. A limitation that I'm fully fine with. I have no need for recording 8K. I just wanted the ability if I ever did need it. But my backup camera or secondary camera, whichever way you want to think about it, is a Panasonic. And I specifically chose the Panasonic because it can film in what's called 6K open gate. Technically, I think there's a little bit of a loss. I don't know. It might be like 5.7K. But regardless, it's recording. This open gate thing is technically just saying it's going to open up the shutter and record everything onto the sensor it possibly can. And it's a 6K sensor. And the reason you do that is because you could then reframe for like social or web or whatever a lot easier because you're recording more info. And so you get the ability to reframe it better and deliver a 4K image than otherwise. Same reason you would theoretically shoot 8K on my primary camera is if I wanted to then crop it to 4K. And so it gave me a good blend of what I could do as a essentially single person production company, right? I like that flexibility. I have never used it, but I like having it. Most of my delivered content is still 1080p. It's rare for somebody to need 4K delivered. It all depends on what the final, viewing mechanism is, and most of the content I deliver at this point is still absorbed on
social
mobile
media
devices. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense because it's such an interesting thing. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Now, that said, I still do, like, there are a couple of things I've still posted in 4K just because it's me, being me.
That's your stuff, though.
But yeah,
to some degree, or it's your post rather, not yours.
It's well, I mean, I've posted both, but like every once in a while, I'll do the same thing with photos. Every once in a while, I'll post a really high quality photo, even though I know you're going to be, looking at it on a small screen, just because I can.
It does make a difference, even though it's a small screen and there's like some sort of, there are only so many pixels on your phone. There's only so much pixel density. It still makes there is still a difference. And I don't know where the difference is. I don't know where the difference stops. Yeah,
Sometimes.
I was just going to say.
So
yeah,
I had the Panasonic, to back up ever so slightly, both cameras are technically referred to as hybrid cameras. The Canon, I think, is truly encapsulating the hybrid camera philosophy because it has two different OSs. I have the Photo OS and the Cinema OS for this particular model. So far, it's the only model they've done that on. Shame on them. But I love that. The Panasonic, it's all in one OS, but it has separate menu items depending on whether you're using photo or video mode. So it's the same kind of thing. And I get it. It's probably better to go that route. That's the way all the other manufacturers have. I love the two different physical modes, though, because I like having the actual Canon Cinema OS for a cinema camera in anything I do video, and then the Photo OS for anything I do photo, and it quickly switches between them. Part of it's just my preference. Part of it's they're a lot of different reasons. But all that to say, like, both cameras do really well at this hybrid philosophy, and there are some other competitors that do pretty good jobs. Typically speaking, you would pick a manufacturer based on whether it's photo first or video first, depending on your needs. That's kind of the long-winded summary building up to where I'm getting. The Canon puts photo and video on an even playing field. If you're photo first, great camera. If you're video first, great camera. That's part of the uniqueness of that particular model and design. The Lumix, the Panasonic, I would classify as a video first hybrid camera, and the photo capabilities are great. I actually tested it out this past weekend, forcing myself to use it as my primary camera for a little bit. Certainly not as good in my hands as the Canon, but part of that's just familiarity and knowing the camera well, as opposed to not using it for that purpose. I was immediately amazed, though, by shutter speed on the Panasonic, because the way I had it set up, I could tap the shutter and I would immediately get 2 or 3 pictures without even trying. So I think it's a honestly, any camera I choose, I think is a great camera. Else I wouldn't have chosen it. But I think it's a really good, really budget-friendly, all-around useful camera. And that's what I wanted as a backup, because I could immediately take it and be a primary if need be. All of that was a long-winded backstory to the whole... there's a breaking point or a line, where you can tell a difference. I think it's roughly in the photo landscape around the 18 to 20 megapixel sensor range for current manufacturers. So something that's maybe 2 years old or so up to current. And I say it that way. I will be the first to tell you megapixels don't mean jack shit, but I say it that way because the Panasonic is a 24 megapixel sensor. It's about a year and a half old, I think, as far as release date on the market. It's kind of borderline from a technology level of where I would say this camera makes a difference as opposed to something you would take with a current generation phone. So that's kind of where I would put camera technology on that equivalent time frame of a 2-year-old camera should still deliver better picture depth and quality if used correctly compared to a current day smartphone camera. But if you know what you're doing, you can make that smartphone camera look phenomenal as well. So it's kind of indistinguishable at that point.
Well, I have learned that knowing how to take pictures is by far more important than the equipment that you have to an extent. And
hands down,
a good photographer can do so much with a point and shoot. I mean, give them any reasonable camera, and they're going to take phenomenal pictures. Now, it may not be the camera that they want, and it may not be the best picture they've taken, but they're going to take great pictures because they know how to take pictures, and knowing how to take pictures is so much more than it's the perspiration part of the perspiration and inspiration. No, do I have that back? Yeah, no, I have that correct. Is it 98% perspiration, 2% inspiration?
I was trying to
something like that.
Think about it because as you were talking, the only thing that kept coming to mind. Do you remember the best camera, quote unquote, movement?
It's the one in your pocket.
So it was. Yeah, exactly. The best camera available to you is the one you have. Like,
yes.
Don't let technology or anything else mess you up from getting out and creating.
I mean, if you don't know what you are, if you're not good at taking pictures, and it's not that nobody. I mean, some people have a natural ability to take pictures, and some people have the eye for that, and some people have to learn less, and some people won't be able to learn enough to be able to take the great pictures. All that being said. If there's a lot of variability on what a person can do and can't do, or learn and can't learn, and the equipment is only going to open up what their abilities or open up their capabilities. Because if you don't know how to take pictures, you're just going to have a bunch of high resolution bad pictures, or a bunch of mediocre pictures in high resolution.
No, I like the high resolution bad pictures. It was.
So
the other part that I think is fascinating about it is I don't know very many artists who wouldn't argue that every picture they take is horrible. Because you always look at it after the fact and I could have done so much better.
I would have done it better. Yes. Yeah. No, I understand that as well, and that's where it's just like, come on, man, don't beat yourself up. I know, I'm sure Ansel Adams can look at his best picture and say, yeah, I could have done better. I would have done this differently. But, I'm sure he's got a few pictures where he's like, I'm happy with that.
It is funny that often the pictures you're most proud of are some of the worst that you take.
Yeah, I find that interesting because they're the ones that you probably struggled with the most.
Or you had that 1 second to try to take a picture and you just, on the fly, a snap of what you could get.
Yes. I would consider
so many different things like that.
I would consider that part of the struggle. I thought about one day buying a new camera because my camera is, I think it was released in 2011.
Yeah, so my spouse and I had this conversation the other day. I don't know the last time her camera was ever touched. I don't even know where it physically is in this house.
You moved it, but you got to find it.
I mean, it's here somewhere, but I bought it for her, and it was she's a Nikon user. I'm a Canon user. It's really difficult for a Canon user to buy a Nikon. And it's not because I have anything against Nikon. It's that I don't understand their models. I know nothing about them. It's like, I think this is a good one. I don't know. But I bought it for her, and I think it might have been used 2 trips, 3 trips. Like it saw very little use. And granted, it was definitely a better camera than what she had prior. I did at least know that much, but I couldn't tell you if it even still functions or where it exists in this house.
I'm sure it functions. Maybe it needs a battery. I don't know. My battery is. I don't. Granted, I don't take a lot of pictures, but it functions. The battery, like, because I don't take a lot of pictures, I don't have battery life issues. But I mean, I've used it for, a year ago I took it to California and used it, and it was running. Uh, it was taking a picture every 10 seconds for over an hour. So
Here's a funnier way to phrase it. I have retired 2 primary cameras since I bought her camera.
Do you recall what model it is that she got
No,
for her?
not even close.
I gotta imagine that Nikon is like suburbs of the metro area we live in.
Yeah, very much.
You don't know them because you don't
Nope.
have to.
I can tell you exactly what models I retired.
Oh, I bet you could. I bet you could tell me the whole history of
Yeah.
bodies that you've had. So I was just thinking when you said she's a Nikon user and you're a Canon user, I was like, my first thought was like, oh, you'll never be able to share lenses.
Yeah, that wouldn't happen anyway. I'm not
Oh.
about to let her touch my high quality glass. No, actually, it's funny. I tried. So, I, obviously, I've already stated, longtime Canon user, but I have tried. An Olympus was my very first foray into uh, DSLRs, and I enjoyed the camera. I got some good results with it. It just wasn't quite what I wanted. That's when I made the transition to Canon. Loved Canon gear. Tried a Sony when they became all the rage for, especially for video content. But if you think back, probably
It was
7
only
or
a
8
few
years
years ago,
ago.
right? Yeah. They're mirrorless cameras, right?
Right. Sony and Fuji both gained massive followings and traction.
Hmm.
And I tried a Sony. It was okay. I didn't hate it, but I didn't like it. It didn't feel right. The menu system felt off. I couldn't make myself adapt to it. And I personally, I would say that's a shortcoming of me. I didn't try hard enough because I didn't have a need to. Uh, but it also didn't fit what I wanted. From a tactile feel perspective. And to me, that's a huge part of a camera. If you don't like the way it feels in your hands, you're going to always hate it. I don't care how good the camera is. Um, and there was something about the Sony that I just did not like. It did not feel comfortable to me.
I can see that their bodies are very blocky, a lot of like close to being sharp edges on it, whereas all of the other SLR cameras that I've seen, they're more ergonomic.
Yeah, I guess. Like I can't say I've ever tried a Fuji. I never felt drawn to try one after my Sony foray and disappointment. Um, at some point, I will try one just to say I have, because I'm that kind of person. I don't like to talk bad about any of them because I think all of them have their place. I think if you're stuck in a brand war mentally about who's best, you're missing the point of the conversation.
I agree.
But at the same time, I fully get that there are fan bases associated with each manufacturer as well. And so each one's going to espouse their benefits and try to convert you. And that's fine. I have no problems listening to people talk about it. I try to keep an open mind for them, but I have found that so far the only brands that I have consistently liked the feel and use of have been Canon and Panasonic. And that's probably who I will stick with. I have no real reason to change. That said, I don't know that I've tried a Nikon since the one I bought for my spouse. So maybe they've gotten better. Who knows?
Well, that's like me. I haven't tried a new Nikon since what I got in 2011 or 12. I just simply I've thought about like if my thought has been okay, if I want to take, there's a certain kind of photography like I've decided like I think I would be interested in, um, and I think that's been the problem for me is that um, you have to find what it is that you want to take pictures of and what motivates you to take pictures and what motivates you to pull a bunch of pull a bunch of heavy gear out and take pictures. I mean, I love gear, and part of it has been like I was a bit of a gearhead about it, and I was like, oh, I want to have this, and then I just haven't taken the pictures. And last year, I let my kids play with it because I'm less. I don't know what the word is I'm looking for.
You're less protective of it.
Yes,
because I very much so. I still have when I made the transition to Canon for DSLR, I went with the 7D, and I still have it. It's sitting on the table behind me, and it will eventually be the one that I let Jacob play with. And I don't know that the 7D Mark II I would consider a showpiece. The 5D would be the big boy. So the 7D.
Oh, I thought the 7D was
APS-C.
bigger. I thought the 7.
No, 7D was not a full frame sensor. It was more your prosumer level, kind of mid tier.
Okay, I'm mistaken.
I mean, I spent a hell of a lot of money on that getup, but at the same time, that would be the one that if Jacob ever decides that he wants to really play with what that type of camera can do, and he's older so that he doesn't, drop it, that's the one that he will have, because I have an array of lenses for it that I don't use anymore that I kept, both Canon glass and I have a couple of Sigma lenses that were just better value for that particular camera. I've got adapters where I could use, actually no, not that direction. The adapters let me use the old EF glass on my new stuff if I really want to. I have no reason to now because I've replaced everything.
Yeah.
But, there's a full ecosystem available to him if he wants to play with it. And if so, great, have at it. All for you. I still also have my first mirrorless Canon that is my tertiary camera, if you will, so that if I'm on location with my other two and something really just fucks up, I have a backup other than just the phone. And then I have two phones where I can record that as well. So it's like at any given time, I have
minimum of 5
ways.
cameras.
Yeah. All capable of recording 4K.
Oh, wow. I would say this Canon that this Nikon that I have is maxes out at 1080 at 30 frames per second. But
yeah, the drawback to the RF model was the first Canon mirrorless. That's when I decided to try mirrorless out.
I remember talking about that with you.
Yeah, I love the camera. No complaints about the camera, other than, like many of Canon's cameras, there's a 30-minute video record limit, and this is where we talked about it, which I despise, but I can work around that if I have to do so. It was a licensing thing.
Yeah. It was. Yeah, there was. I remember hearing about that, and I was like, "Oh, that makes sense," because my camera is the same way. It stops at 30 minutes, and I found that out the hard way when I was trying to record something longer than 30 minutes and didn't know. So, and then I later heard about discussion about it. But is that still the case with cameras?
It all depends on the camera.
Okay, so if you get a camera that's meant to be or sold as or marketed as primarily for still photos, it's going to have that limitation versus something that is
possibly. So we're in the past year, we're in that era of manufacturers realizing that people despise it, and so a number of newer cameras just they've paid whatever they've had to pay or whatever it is and have removed that limit. So you just have to be mindful of that when shopping around. I would expect within the next year or so nobody's going to have a 30-minute limit because there are too many people using these cameras for video content where it becomes problematic. Then again, there's also plenty of people who are more than happy to record 10, 15 minutes at a time and splice it together. So it's really tough at the moment to say for sure that it's going to transition completely there. You just have to look at the specs and make sure.
Just pay attention to what you're purchasing. So, because that was a question I was going to ask you about your cameras, and so I at this point I would expect that you don't have that limit on your at least your primary.
Yeah, no, I have no recording time limit on my primary or secondary cameras.
Good. It's interesting because you you brought up Sony being because it's really come into vogue in the late 2010s, and that was a thing that I was thinking, just kind of like window shopping, really. Some Sony cameras, they're so expensive right now.
Yeah,
I think they've always been expensive, but
I enjoyed the camera feature set. I just didn't like the feel. But then again, I could say the same thing about Nikon. I tried a couple of different Nikons, being the really older ones at this point that my wife has, and I didn't like the feel. It wasn't horrible. It just wasn't for me. So it's one of those things that I always recommend. If you can rent one or borrow one, or meet up with a friend, use it for 5-10 minutes, anything to get your hands on a version and have a feel for whether it's a good match for what you're looking for. Or if you're just the type of person that can adapt to it without a problem, just order one. It doesn't matter. But it's very much a tactile thing for me.
I think using one is a good idea, and that was at some point. My plan, I have this idea. If I do this, if I find, I've sort of like thought of some things that I was like, ooh, I would really enjoy just going out and taking pictures of this thing.
So I'm intrigued, of course, that you've referenced this as a possibility and haven't. We don't have to go into it. I'm just saying that this is something that's going to be on the back of my mind until you decide to divulge it.
No, I'll go ahead. So there's two kinds of photography that I've found really. I think that would be the thing that really motivate me to take pictures with a high end equipment, and that is clouds and stars. So
I've actually been considering figuring out an astrophotography kit. So that's
So I feel like you could do this with anything, but at some point, there's if you really get into it, then yes, you're going to look for certain equipment to make it get the best possible. But yeah, astrophotography has been really interesting. But also over the last, I don't know, maybe year, I've just been really interested in clouds, like like the science of clouds, the naming, where they exist in the sky and so forth, and like even to the extent that I started naming things. Like I decided to go with like a cloud, using clouds for my naming convention for like my server. Like my Mac Mini server is called Alto Cumulus, and which is a type of cloud, and but it's been. I don't know why. I think they're so cool, but I decided I can remember being in 8th grade and loving that section in science where we go over the physical climate and physical science and so forth, and I really enjoyed that, and it just, I don't know, there's been a resurgence of that in my mind, and so I've been thinking about that, and so I've been taking cloud pictures with my iPhone, and the picture, there was a moment last Friday when I was like, oh, Jesse, please take these pictures, because it was a perfect, there's this beautiful cloud, and those pictures turned out fantastic. I showed them to everybody around, and they were like, those are fantastic. I was like, I know, Jesse took those. So that's been the thing. And I thought, there was a moment where I had in my head, I was like, I'm going to go with the Sony. And part of it's been that it's not that it's in vogue, but there's been a lot of folks that have talked, highly about Sony. And then and this discussion tonight, I've realized, even though I've had technically three Nikons, I've had two DSLR and one SLR, but the one that was a film camera was, it was at the time, so it was my ex-wife's camera, but at the time she was my girlfriend, and she got it as a graduation gift. So, we were dating. We were engaged at the time. So, I'd used it a fair amount, um, and then uh, I got a DSLR from her as a graduation gift, and I think she went with Nikon because that's what she had, and she knew it, and I think she expected it to have. I think there was an expectation that the lenses would be compatible. They fit, but they don't work. Anyway, um, so that's why I ended up with a second Nikon because it was because I knew it. It wasn't, I think at some point if I know at some point I was like, I was interested in Canon, but I just sort of fell into my lap in a way. So that being the case, I think that if I decide to buy new camera equipment, I will probably rent some cameras from different brands. I would definitely rent a Canon, definitely rent a Sony, and see what I like and so forth.
Yeah, it's at this point it's kind of the best way to go. The only one that I have purchased without touching first was the Panasonic that I now use as a backup. And the only reason I went that route with it was because my use case is predominantly with it filming a static second shot. I wasn't concerned, and then I was pleasantly surprised when it felt comfortable in hand. But 99% of the time, I have it rigged out with a separate attachment and everything else as a cinema-style camera on a tripod. It's not my go-to handheld option. That's the Canon.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then I was just happy when it also feels comfortable to be a go-to handheld option. Happy coincidences.
Yeah. I think that's always a nice thing. But if you were, I guess going into it, did you know that it was not intended to be? You were intending to put it on for static shots, use it for static shots.
Yeah.
Okay. It didn't matter.
Yeah, my purchase was driven predominantly on capabilities that are offered and budget and knowing how I planned to use it. There are not many cameras that do open gate as an option for video. This is one of the few, and it was like $1,800, $1,900 when I bought it.
Oh wow! Okay.
It's a steal in today's market if video is your primary use case. If your primary use case is photography, I think there are some better options. But for video, the only real competitor for the ability to do 6K like that is Blackmagic Design with their cinema camera. And even then, I would choose the Panasonic over the Blackmagic camera just because of its photo capability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just gonna say I've heard people talk about Red. I know Red is popular with cinema for movies, and so man, it was just like I don't know, it's like $5,000 for the body by itself.
Yeah, it's.
But
pricey.
then there's certain people. I was gonna say, but then there's certain people like that's a steal compared to what I guess.
Well, I mean, I think back to when I first played with video. I bought a Canon XL1, which was a shoulder-mounted, well, you can say shoulder-mounted, strictly video camera, recorded to mini DV. It was back when we were concerned about it being 3 CCD as opposed to single CCD for image capture. You still were only getting, it might have done 720. I don't think it did. Either way, doesn't matter. It's irrelevant for the purpose of the story. But I spent $5,000 on that camera, and
that was in what year dollars?
Early thousands. And the R5C that I have now, mirrorless style camera, mirrorless camera, but mirrorless style as far as body goes, far more compact and everything else. It has the dual operating systems for photo and cinema, so it's both use cases, whereas the XL1 was video strictly. There was no photo taking capability for that camera. You had to have a separate photographic camera if you wanted to do still images. And when I bought the R5C, it was maybe 6 months on the market for $3,500. Just drastic difference in capabilities at this point.
Wow.
And the R5C, like I get there are proponents for using red and airy for a number of different things. They're typically $8,000 to $12,000 camera bodies. I can record 8K HDR files with the R5C if I wanted to. I just don't see the reason for me to go with a dedicated cinema camera, because I'm not shooting feature-length film.
Well, and then you go look at, segue. You look at WWDC, and it's a great video, and it's all shot on. I don't know if it's all shot on iPhone, but some of it's shot on iPhone.
Yeah, I guarantee not all of it is, but I would not be surprised if a decent amount of it is iPhone in a fairly robust cinema rig.
Oh, no, absolutely. Absolutely. The rig is going to cost way more than the phone.
Well, I think so, but you'd be surprised at what you can cost effectively rig out a phone with.
Well, I'm assuming that they're buying an expensive rig.
Oh, I'm sure. They're
buying a top of the line rig for the phone.
My guess would be that a independent filmmaker could rig it out with similar capabilities for $1,500 to $2,500, just depending on how expensive they wanted to go on certain features. I'm sure Apple easily rigs it out at $8,000 to $10,000.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say that this is the place where it's like the artist is far more valuable than the equipment. At this point, you've got the equipment. I can't tell what's shot on iPhone. I can't tell what's not shot on iPhone. And I remember even when I think it was the first Avengers movie, there was like the director was saying there was a scene that was shot on iPhone, and he wouldn't tell you what it was. And it's like you watch the movie and it's like, I can't tell. So if, there's the right thing, there's the right equipment for the right shot, the right angle, the right situation. And sometimes it's this and sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's sometimes it's an iPhone, and maybe sometimes it's a $30,000 camera.
There is a reason I really do like Austin Mann's reviews of the different phones as they're released, particularly the camera systems in the phones as they're released.
What?
Austin Mann, who typically has done like a shot on iPhone campaign with each of the most I'd say it from the 12 Pro, maybe 13 Pro. Either way, at least the most recent 3 or 4 years, he does Expedition and uses the iPhone as the camera on the Expedition to show you its capabilities. And part of why I like his reviews is because he doesn't go overboard with gear. Yes, there'll be appropriate lighting, which in certain situations could cost a decent amount. And there'll be tripods or, other options for stabilization. I don't think he uses any third-party lenses, though. I think everything is native to the phone. If anything, he might use a couple of filters. But phenomenal work. Looks great. It's why I do like the Shot on iPhone marketing campaign, because it is actually realistic in what a person could achieve if they want to put forth a little bit of effort. And that little bit of effort's not a lot. We're worst case scenario, we're talking a couple $100 in filters and a case to allow you to put the filters on.
Well, I think that when you can when you can, so I would say when you can spend a few $100s on a setup, you're already going to get a phone, and I don't want to. It's not an inexpensive phone by any means, but I don't want to. I don't want to trivialize the amount of money spent on it, but if you're already going to have a phone in your pocket and you can spend a few $100 on some accessories and equipment to enhance the picture taking capability, it just makes it, I think, like you said, like showcasing what can be done on iPhone just makes creativity so much more accessible. Because like how many kids just didn't have the ability to do certain things 20 years ago because it was out of reach. I did a quick inflation calculator to look up for $5,000. If you bought that in 2000, you were just over $9,000. In 2005, it went down, like the inflation for today would have been just over $8,000. It's a lot of money for a kid in their 20s.
Yeah, it was money stupidly spent too, but that's a whole different tangent.
You had dreams.
I mean, it certainly fueled the desire to get back to doing that type of thing. So I won't discount it completely, but nobody in their right mind at that age should have spent that much money on a camera.
Maybe.
And to think I was desperately trying to figure out how I could buy a GL2, which was the lower price point camera, to be a secondary to film, and ended up with a Panasonic, actually, handheld as a secondary instead, because it was one of the few 3 CCD cameras available in that price point. So I guess I've been a long-time Panasonic user too, now that I think about it.
Yeah. Oh, Panasonic they make good stuff. I wish we could still get their TVs. We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
Or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work or are interested in listening to our new after show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap.